Welcome to Esalen Live, where we chat with change agents and swim deep waters in an ongoing exploration of human potential. I'm Christine Chen. It's possible that you will learn about one of the most healing, powerful, and inspiring practices on earth today, right here, right now. It is called forest bathing, and it's rooted in the Japanese culture called Shinrin yoku. Sylvie Rokab is a filmmaker and an expert guide for the benefits of Shinrin forest bathing, bathing in the forest, called lots of different things. And she joins us on Esalen Live today. Hi, Sylvie. How are you?
Hi, Christine. It's such an honor to be here. I'm doing great. And thank you all for joining us today.
Yeah, this is fascinating. A lot of people really want to know about forest bathing. It's so accessible. Uh, you made a film about forest bathing called Love Thy Nature, and it's highly award winning and was narrated by Liam Neeson. Tell us a little bit about your film and why you're so interested in the concept of forest bathing.
Sure. So the film really points to how far, as a civilization, as also as individuals, how far we've distanced ourselves from nature. And it takes people in this poetic immersion of the beauty and the intimacy of our relationship with the natural world. And I was really interested when I first heard about forest bathing as being a practice that was ignited in Japan. Actually, the practice really exists for thousands of years, but the Japanese government decided to institutionalize it like in the 1980s and really invested in studies to discover the benefits of spending time in forests. And they were able to prove scientifically, empirically, what we've known for millennia is that nature is good for us. And so basically, Amos Clifford brought this practice to the West and decided to train forest bathing guides. And I thought the whole process is just fascinating. It's needed. And I just jumped on it. And I felt like after the film was created, we started doing view and do events. So people, audience members would watch the film, and then either myself or a shaman or a teacher or someone would then guide them in nature. And then I got to realize, wait a minute, I need to become certified and really know how to do this practice.
Mm,
And and it's really, I mean, it's incredibly beneficial for people.
yeah.
So it's basically what forest bathing is about and how this came about for me to be doing this work and offering this opportunity for folks.
Yeah. Well, if you're watching us on Facebook Live and just joining us, send Sylvie Rokab a little love. She's a filmmaker, an expert guide in the benefits of bathing in the forest, a practice rooted in Japanese culture and was institutionalized. You can also ask her questions about how you might be able to do this practice in your own backyard where there's maybe a tree or two, because all it takes is like a little pieces of nature. And so, Sylvie, can you take us through the practice, just a little bit of it? You have a workshop coming up at Esalen, and for those of us who want to just learn a little bit about it right now, can you take us on a small journey?
Sure, Christine. And the interesting thing you mentioned, you can do forest bathing like in your backyard. I would say to people, you can even do it in a parking lot or inside your home. The interesting thing about the practice of forest bathing is, first of all, we slow way down and we really get to realize that we are part of something so much bigger than ourselves.
Mm,
And really, by slowing down and becoming more embodied, we open our senses. And this is what we offer people too. It's like we tell them, connect with the sounds or close your eyes and see if you can sense the scents or maybe touch a rock or a being, whatever that being might be, and see what senses come to you, what communication might be coming to you. And so by becoming fully embodied, we get to realize that, first of all, we awaken fully, we get out of our heads into our hearts and into our bodies. we awaken all of our sensations, and we just really get a feeling of belonging fully. And going back to the beginning, this brings us to, you can even do it at home by connecting with the food that you're eating and sensing the smells and the taste and drinking water, or realizing that you might be opening a window in the morning and taking a whiff of fresh, delicious morning air while you're hearing the birds singing. And of course, when we do this as a workshop, I basically offer folks invitations, and those invitations vary. And sometimes the forest guides me in terms of like what invitations are there to be shared with folks, or maybe what is it that the invitations that folks might want to most experience. And so there's a lot of like, we talk about the senses as not just the five Western senses, but also like the sense of gravity and intuition and imagination, the sense of creativity. And we just allow all of those to blossom wherever we are.
Sylvie, I want to ask you about this beautiful photo here because there's a sense of, in this practice, arranging, which is also very pertinent in art in Japanese culture, is arranging. Is that what's happening here? Can you describe what we're seeing and why this is part of the forest bathing experience?
Sure. So, one of the invitations that we often offer is to find beings in nature that feel like they evoke some sign of something that's artistic, or that you feel called to collect. And we do this as a group. And what happens is, by collecting something that is meaningful to us or that might be calling to us, and then in community as a group, we bring those beings and we lay them down, and together we end up creating an art piece. I mean,
Mm,
nature has created art pieces everywhere. But
mm,
now, as the humans become integrated with nature, we ourselves, with our sense of intuition and our sense of creativity, we bring those pieces together and we form and create like little arts. And then we
mm,
go around and we talk about, what does that art expression evoke in you? Or, would you like to share? And people are invited to share. They're not obliged to share, but they can pass. And before COVID, we would have a talking piece where people would share and pass it to somebody else.
mm,
Nowadays, we just ask people to get their own piece and speak if they wish to, and if they don't, to practice deep listening, which
mm.
again is very much following and being inspired by the Japanese culture, which is such a deep reverence kind of culture. It's a culture that's imbued in, mindfulness and in presence and in reverence.
Right.
It's a
In
beautiful
respect, right? In
thing.
respect to things that are larger than
Yeah,
ourselves. A question about the
exactly.
circle where you reference that there's opportunities to share how this practice brings things out, brings things up. What is and why is an Esalen forest bathing experience so relevant right now given what we've been through? And if you're just joining us on Facebook Live, we're with Sylvie Rokab. She's a filmmaker and expert guide on the benefits of forest bathing, and that's the topic of Esalen Live today. So feel free to ask questions about how you can do this at home. So the benefits of doing something like this at Esalen, which is so bathed in nature, what's the relevance right now for us?
So there are two beautiful parts to this question. Is first is the right now. We've been experiencing this very challenging time for more than a year now, where we have been, some of us, in situations like lockdowns, other of us who have not had an opportunity for community, really, and just very difficult times. Many of us have lost loved ones, or have had loved ones who got sick, or whatever the challenge might be, have lost a job, or the situation has been very difficult for many people. And we have been getting more requests for workshops just in the last few weeks than we ever have before. So there's a yearning and there's an opportunity for connection. Of course, we will be following COVID protocol in terms of social distancing and masks. And at the same time, one of the beautiful things about forest bathing is that we can do it outdoors. And so obviously the risk level is much reduced when it comes to being outside.
Mm.
And with forest bathing, there's an opportunity to have a much bigger distance. And so, people really have a sense of freedom at the same time that we have an opportunity for community. And the second part of your question is why at Esalen? I mean, just that by itself, I would probably need half an hour to explain, but Esalen
Yeah.
is such a magnificent place. And the fact that, first of all, Big Sur, for those of you who haven't been, I mean, it's an extraordinarily beautiful natural place of basically mountains that are diving into the ocean that is filled with waves and whales and wildlife and the sounds of the winds, and on Esalen land, the ancient trees that have been present for thousands of years, the history of the Esalen people, the tribe. It's very important to really, know that that land was inhabited for 6,000 years by the Esalen tribe. And at Esalen, there are actually reminiscent artifacts from their culture. And many of us really sense and believe that the energy and the beauty of these folks who lived in those lands for thousands of years emanates through these grounds. Esalen is also considered by many to be the birthplace of the human potential movement. It has been around since the 1960s, and the people who work at Esalen, who come to Esalen, who has illuminated this land even further in addition to the tribe, just make this place be absolutely magical. So there's
Mm.
something very special. And those of us who have an opportunity to step on this land feel honored to be there. I mean, I certainly do. And a lot of the participants that we've had in the past really share how much that land means so much to them.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
lot of people share those thoughts for sure. Sylvie, do you remember a moment when you were forest bathing at Esalen, or maybe even elsewhere, where you really felt the essence of this practice, Shirin yoku?
That's a really interesting question. And let me think of this for just a second. What comes to me is the sense that I feel that intuitively this practice has been in me for all my life. And I really feel that this practice has been in everyone, even if they're not consciously aware of it. The truth of it is that we live in a time and in a civilization that has really disconnected us from the roots of who we are. I mean, more than 99.9% of our time on Earth, we lived in natural environments. And the modern times have sort of like encouraged us or pushed us into disconnecting. But the truth of it is just like Richard Louv, the best-selling author of the book The Last Child in the Woods and many other incredible books, usually says the more evolved we become, the more high-tech we become, the more we need nature. Because the truth of it is that the air that we're breathing, you and I right now, this is nature breathing us. We're not doing it consciously. Every cell of our bodies are connected with this world by hydration, by nutrition, by inspiration, the very sense of who we are, even though we might forget, we are natural beings and we will always be. So when we do go back, when we do reawaken this knowledge that we all have inside of us, and going back, I know you asked that question, Christine, about myself. when I go back and do the forest bathing practice, it just brings me back to being fully myself. And when I don't do it, when we were working on the film, we had times were really intense with deadlines and film festivals and whatnot. And when I was off course, a team member or another would come to me and say, Sylvie, it's time for your nature fix. It's just like we get off.
Yeah.
But the truth of it is that it's so easy to reconnect if we just give ourselves the gift of time, even if that time is 5 or 10 minutes.
Right. I mean, this encompasses what we talk about so much in any spiritual practice. The word grounding comes up a lot across the board, and this is just one dimension of that. Would you say this is a form of meditation?
There's a lot of controversy about this because, some folks like to think of it as something different. It all depends of what we call meditation, right? Um, I would say that you can certainly meditate, and that is a form of bathing in the forest, or that is a form of nature therapy, because all meditation inevitably involves nature, even if the nature is this nature here, it's this body, this presence. Um, it's definitely a mindfulness practice,
Hmm.
because what happens is, and those are the very first invitations that we offer with workshops, is the invitation to slow way down. And that immediately makes you, as you said at the beginning of this conversation, diving deeply. And you're diving deeply into the present moment and
Hmm.
into embodiment.
Cool. Well, thank you, Ben, Joyce, Maria, for coming in with some love for Sylvie here. If you're just joining us, we've been talking about the practice of Shinrin yoku, forest bathing. It's the subject of a film by Sylvie, and it's called Love Thy Nature. We'll put up the link for the trailer so you can check it out and maybe schedule a screening for where you are. And if you would like to join Sylvie in this practice at Esalen, she has a workshop coming up not too far away in just a couple of weeks here, deepening connection with nature, self, and others at this workshop. And I'm guessing there will be much wandering around the grounds of Esalen in this practice, since you mentioned that Esalen has so much to offer in the way of forest bathing. Would that be right, Sylvie?
Absolutely. I mean, the land is just beautiful, and the invitations, they range very widely. But just to give you a taste, one of them that I often offer is to gaze at the ocean and communing with the ocean. And Esalen has so many different places where we can be very close to the edge and look at the waves as they crash on rocks and all of the foam formations. And of course, looking out to the infinity, there's something about diving and communing with the ocean that is incredibly beautiful.
Yeah, I would say I'll have to admit that's my absolute favorite. So thank you for
Mhm.
ending this on such a loving note. I know personally I feel that, and I hope that you at home joining us on Esalen Live feel it too. This has been a really beautiful time sitting with Sylvie Rokab, filmmaker, expert guide on forest bathing. If you want to join her workshop's coming up in a couple of weeks. So Sylvie, last question here as we say goodbye. And thanks everyone for joining us. Um, what's your favorite tree?
Ah, I love many of them, but I have a beautiful bond with oak trees. They are
Nice.
tall, they're beautiful, they're strong, and that would be my tree of choice for today anyway.
Yeah. Well, maybe we can all have that as a point of meditation or thought today. What's your favorite tree?
Yeah.
Stay connected. Eslin.org. Bye. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye, everyone.